Corbolic V2. This is a super safe and effective natural anabolic. Not only is this product going to help you increase protein synthesis, which basically means muscle recovery and growth, it also may inhibit myostatin, which is a protein in your body that is known to inhibit muscle growth. This is a complete natural anabolic that works through multiple different pathways, has multiple trademarked ingredients. If you are a natural athlete looking for that edge, Corbolic V2 is what you need. Get yourself some.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Pro Physique Code. Today with Lexi and Evan, we are going to discuss the Bikini Olympia, the pinnacle of our sport, and congrats to our new champion, though I don't think any of us are surprised, Miss Laura Lee Chapados. But yeah, I think very interesting. Very interesting.
Very. I like these types of shows, though. I kind of like I made my predictions ahead of time, but I was, I wasn't surprised by our top two, but I kind of like when the other placings almost surprise us. I'm not saying in a bad way at all. I think it's just really cool. And it just, we'll go into depth on this, but it speaks volumes to the division and how these tiny little micro details of how somebody shows up on the given day at the given time, makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think predictions are one thing, but you have to remember that predictions are all based on the past, and you don't know what's going on with a person leading up to a show, their prep, their personal lives. All these things have big impacts. These are human beings that are impacted by many things. I mean, gosh, Lexi, me and you were stressed at even going to the Olympia after that Hurricane Milton came through.
Oh my gosh. No, we should talk about that real quick because I feel like people always want to know the personal things. But yeah, Paul, I was so nervous because when I texted you on Sunday, so for those of you guys listening, we live in Tampa, so we were in the direct path of Hurricane Milton, and the airport was closing. And when you texted me on Sunday, Paul, and said you had already left and that you had were hoping I'd be able to make it out on Tuesday, even I was like, oh boy, I don't know. I was really, really worried and panicked, but by the grace of God, on Monday, when they announced that the airport was closing at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, I got into the Southwest app and I found a flight out that morning, Tuesday morning at 6:55. And I just crossed my fingers, got to the airport extra early. And when I was on that plane and we took off, I just sighed a deep breath. It was the most stressful and chaotic 24 hours, but nonetheless.
That was my original flight, was that 7 a.m. Monday flight, because I had people competing at the amateur. So usually for me, the nice thing about for when you fly to the West Coast, the 3-hour time difference. So if the flight leaves at 7 a.m., you land at 8 or 9 a.m., right?
Yeah.
So you get the whole day. So that was my plan. But then when that storm came, I said, you know what? I booked the last flight out on Sunday, just got a hotel. So I would just guarantee to be there for Monday to go see all the athletes. And we ended up, training, posing and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a full week. And I'll be honest, I just got back and it takes me a couple days. It's just, I don't like going to the West Coast. I don't know if it's because I'm old or what now, but that 3-hour time difference, I don't sleep well. Yeah.
I really like being on Eastern time because I feel like whenever I travel west, I almost feel like I'm quote unquote behind. I mean, technically you are, but I just feel like my personality, I hate being so far behind. But yeah, the first, even this morning and yesterday morning was my first morning back. It's hard to wake up. I just feel really groggy because I'm waking up essentially 3 hours earlier than I have been. So that's a little bit of an adjustment, but honestly, so glad I went. It was a really fun time, and it was cool getting to see Brett. I didn't know he was actually going to be there, so it was cool to be able to see him too.
Yeah, it was cool. You got to come out and train at his house, and that was the nice thing. I was able to have the athletes do all that, and yeah, it's part of the nice thing about going out there is, when Brett goes, I ended up staying with him for half of my trip, and he's just got such a nice setup there with the gym at his house, but it's still, for me, I woke up every day like clockwork at 3 a.m. because I get up and take my kid to school every day, so my body clock is just up. So waking up, being okay, you got to go back to sleep, try to sleep for a few hours, waking up. Now I'm waking up at 5 or 6 Vegas time, and now I'm oh crap, it's 9 o'clock at home, I got to get my client updates done. It's a very uneasy feeling. at least until the weekend, because I know on Friday, Saturdays, you know, I'm not doing check-ins. So
Yes. Yeah. Brett had a neat setup for his gym. I will say I've been to, well, his gym, and then also I've been to Torture and LV Fit Club. I have not been to Dragon's Lair, but I'm going to put it out there. I still think Brett's gym is the best out of those ones that I visited. I just loved it. And I loved, like, it was kind of like partly you kind of were training outside since the garage doors were open. And I just love that
Yeah.
dry heat. Like, I love the dryness compared to the humidity. I really do.
yeah, he has equipment that's so unique to him that you're just not going to find, you know, 3 variations of abduction in a single garage gym, or like
Right.
he just picks very specific pieces. Um, so yeah, everyone I had an old friend who I'm training now, Diana Dahlgren, come out on Sunday and train with me, and then a bikini pro from Canada was down. Margarita trained with her on Sunday at the house. So it's just nice to put them through the workouts. But then you're like, they're like, oh, how come you don't have this in my program? I'm like, do you have this at any gym? No.
Yes. Like
Mhm.
the snow angels and the
Yeah.
gluteator. I love those machines. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was overall a really fun time. And I'm glad we were both able to make it out of the hurricane madness. Evan, did you hold up okay here with the hurricane?
Yeah, everything was fine. For the most part, I lost power for a little bit, but outside of that, everything was fine. Everything was fine. I was supposed to be on vacation with the family, big Disney trip that obviously got a little bit derailed with everything that kind of happened. But you know, all things considered, it ended up working out because we had to deal with the hurricane situation. So
Yeah, I was thinking about you with that trip. I figured your family probably didn't end up coming down for that. It would have
they
been.
did. They did.
Oh, they
They
did.
just, yeah, we just ended up delaying most of it until next year. So, but they already driven down, so we still got together and did a few things.
Nice. Nice. Well, where do we want to start? Do you want to start, Paul, with like, do we want to talk about any of the things leading up to the actual show?
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
I think the first thing we'll talk about is the big news that came out at check-ins. When I found out at check-ins that the Olympia champion from 2 years ago and second place last year was not competing, was when we were at the check-ins for Pro Bikini, which they bring everybody in the room, so the coaches aren't allowed to go in there. So I was just sitting outside, but that's when I guess she posted on Instagram, or I don't know what the official timing was. It seemed weird that it was like that moment, but all we were all thinking was like, ooh, top 2 are gone this year. No Jen, no Maureen. It is wide open.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not watch the full video that she posted, so but I do remember it was on Thursday because I remember hearing a couple people say, "Well, this is weird." They do like that press conference on Thursday, and I heard some people talking about how it was weird that Maureen wasn't there, and then that's like right around when she posted a
Yeah.
video on Instagram announcing I think she got injured or something with like her foot or ankle. And then she actually, I think it was like the next day, she posted progress pictures of kind of where she ended in prep. And I mean, honestly, she looked really good.
It looked
I,
phenomenal.
yeah, because I had her originally in like the second place spot, but then when she dropped out, obviously that bumped in my original placings Ashley up to second place, which is where she ended. So yeah, that was a bit of a shocker.
Yeah, I think the from the video that what I heard was she was on her way to the Pittsburgh Pro photo shoot gym, like the Pittsburgh NPC knows online photo gym for her road to the Olympia video. Something happened on an escalator, someone bumped into her, she stepped back, twisted her ankle, and that was a few weeks out, and she hadn't been able to train or do cardio. And I did see her walking in a wrap. She wasn't in a boot or anything. So I guess it was probably pretty significant for a short time, but she was able to be at the Olympia and walk around. But yeah, it was, I can imagine when you only do one show a year, that's pretty devastating. So, my guess is that she will do the Arnold, which she has never won. Um, she even after she won the Olympia, the next show she did was Arnold, and she did not win the Arnold. So I think that's probably going to be on her radar. And maybe Laura Lee will skip it this year. She'd won it 3 years. Her goal was the Olympia. She got that. I'm sure her focus is going to be on the Olympia next year. We'll see. It's always
Yeah.
fun when you have the Olympia champion at the Arnold. It just raises the level. But yeah, I think that was the first thing that I thought. It's going to throw everyone's predictions off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, without Maureen, without Jen, there was a lot of opportunity for some people to jump up there, and that sure happened.
I think one thing that really jumped off from just watching it too was the kudos to the judges for judging what was on stage this year. not based off names or predictions, or and not saying that normally happens, but this year I think there was a lot of movement just in a lot of the divisions on people that look great on the day. Look great on
Oh
the day
yeah, I was not
throughout
familiar
all
with
divisions.
Mike, the guy from the classic physique divisions, because we all thought, okay, it's going to be
Yeah.
Wesley Vissers who won the Arnold, or it's going to be Dino fighting, or Urs came in looking incredible. Nope,
And he took first place votes away from Chris. This was
one.
not a unanimous.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he won
It was
sixth.
one. It was not a unanimous. I mean, throw the
Yeah.
high and the lows out, but it was not
Yeah.
unanimous for
Well,
Chris to
very
win.
rarely do you see someone stand next to Chris and expose his structure. That guy's
Mhm.
structure was better than Chris's. Chris doesn't have the tiniest waist, but it's certainly not, a problem. But this guy has one of those alien waists.
Mhm.
So it's going to be very interesting because the classic physique division, which at prejudging, when you go to the Olympia, it goes classic physique first at 9 a.m., then men's physique, then bikini. When you get there for the classic physique division, the entire expo is standing there to see them. I'm
Oh
just
my
going to be
gosh.
curious
Yes.
how that changes without Chris being there.
I know, I know. It was so interesting because it was so on Saturday, I think it was Saturday, maybe Friday, I can't remember. But like right when the expo doors opened for just the general public, I believe it was Saturday, it was so crazy to see. Like it was a lot of like teenage boys like running to the front of the expo hall, or the back, I guess you could say, which was where the stage was. Like they were like, the moment the expo doors opened, they just ran to get the best seats. I thought that was really interesting to watch. But yeah, it was Chris is officially retired, and I don't think there was probably a dry eye in the whole theater when he announced that and did his speech, because yeah, that was sure something.
Yeah, two of the goats retired with Sid Gillen after 8 consecutive.
Mhm.
And what's crazy is she's 32. She probably could have won another 4 or 5 phased.
Right.
But yeah.
I was just like crossing my fingers that like by the time Sid announced her retirement, then Chris, and then I was when Laura Lee won, I was like, oh my God, please like don't announce her retirement. I was like, oh gosh, if she announces a retirement, this is gonna be an interesting year. But she did not. So will she like
Well, I
you
mean,
said, she
the
does
thing to
next?
think about, Jen has not announced her retirement.
Yeah.
Next year, you could have 3, 4, 4 Olympia champions, 5 with Angelica if she comes back. I mean, you could have a whole host of Olympia champions fight, Issa 6. So, like, think about that. You had the potential, for a really interesting call out. And I was wondering if they would just do it, just put Ashley and Angelica and Issa together, but they never did that. They never did that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I wouldn't necessarily say this was a surprise, but Ashley Kay, I mean, I think that the way she showed up on stage was her best ever physique wise. And I know I had a lot of people asking, like, why did Laura Lee beat Ashley? I thought Ashley was going to win. And I think they both brought amazing, like, balance within their physique. But I truly feel like when Laura Lee shows up on, and you couple that with just like her captivation when she poses, it's lights out. Like if you have never seen her in person pose, I don't know about you guys, but it's just like the room gets quiet and she's just like captivating everybody with her posing and her fluidity and her grace. It's next level.
I mean, watching prejudging, it was very clear that Laura Lee won. They were not fighting for first. They were fighting for second because, when you go to shows all year, they do this move where they got 2 people in the middle. If they move somebody out of the middle and move them back in, the person that stayed there is usually the winner. And they did that with Jazzy and Ashley. So it was actually Jazzy that was fighting to get in that top 2. I don't think it was Ashley that was fighting for the win. I mean, just my naked eye, I didn't think Ashley was as tight in the back as I've seen her. Maybe that's a good thing, but I thought her physique last year was better. And I actually thought, you know, if she looked how she looked last year, it might have been her day. I don't know. Laura Lee was pretty on. Which I'll say this, she was one of the few people that were of the big names that were on.
Yeah.
So let me do something fun. So while I was watching, I was taking notes on my phone. Okay. Like when they were doing the groups or the individuals, I was writing, okay, who's a standout to me? Who do I see in that first call out? And then when the number got too high, I was like, okay, some of these people will not be in the first call out.
Okay,
So
so you're gonna read your notes?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say the names because I was literally, it was like a live thing. And sometimes you question yourself, like, no, that person. But I think these were pretty accurate. So
Okay.
the first person I saw was Maria Acosta. She was like maybe one of the first competitors.
Yeah,
I
because
was
that
like,
makes
and
sense with her
she
last
was one
name.
of my predictions. I said it to anybody that asked me who's the surprise this year. I said, no one knows about Maria Acosta. If you haven't seen her in person, she's flawless. Um, so I had Maria, Vanya, Tamikia, Laura Lee, Amy, Jazzy, Ashley K, Ashlyn, Reina, the Mexican, and Isa in my first call out predictions. And then in second, I had Alice Roca, Ali Vathauer, and Angelica Teixeira. Ali actually ended up getting into that first call out, but then she got slid out where she didn't come in the top 10. So she was in the initial top 8 and then she moved out a little bit. But yeah, all of these people were in the mix. From the get-go. I would have had Maria higher. I thought she was just really on.
Yeah,
Honestly,
she
I could
was.
have swapped her with Amy. Amy didn't have her usual like wow factor. Like when I saw her at Wasatch this year, I was like, good grief, like that's Miss Bikini Olympia. When I saw her come out, I was like, ugh,
Mhm.
because I had Brittany in second there, and I wanted every reason to just be like, yeah, we got this. So I haven't seen her since Wasatch, and she was not the same athlete. Whether it's I don't know, like heat
Yeah, I
conditioning. I don't know
agree.
what it was.
I agreed with that. I mean, she still looked amazing, don't get me wrong, but I think a lot of people, I mean, I think if you would have asked a lot of people like months ago who they had potentially winning Miss Bikini Olympia, I think a lot of people for a while would have probably said Amy. I mean,
Mhm.
it would have made sense. We had Amy and Laura Lee fighting for top where they were top 2 at the Arnold, but yeah, I mean, she looked good. I think she just did lack a little bit of that like pop and wow factor, like you said,
Yeah.
Paul. And I think what's interesting and like full disclaimer too for those of you guys listening, it's kind of crazy to like look at these pictures and look at these pictures of the top 10 and like these ladies, they all look amazing. They have all won a show to get here. So like we are comparing the tiniest little micro details for each of these athletes. But you guys, do you want me, for those listening, do you want me to just go through really quickly like who the top 10 were so they know in reference?
Yeah, you can just, if you want to just do them from 10 to first.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, 10th place, Angelica, ninth place, Jordan, 8th place, Isa, 7th place, Maria Acosta, 6th place, Ashlyn Little. So, 5th place was Vanya, 4th place was Amy, 3rd place was Jazzy Gonzalez, 2nd place was Ashley Kaltwasser, and 1st place was obviously Laura Lee.
Yeah. And I didn't have Jordan in that in my list on there, but obviously I thought she looked good. Her
Yeah.
orange suit kind of threw me, like, yeah.
Yeah, and I've always wondered if the judges like comment on that because she's worn it a couple times now, and orange is definitely it's like that orange, like almost peachy color. That's definitely a
She would
color
have
that
got she would have gotten feedback from all the judges by now, so they're obviously
yeah.
fine with it. And again,
Mhm.
the one thing about, I was not far away, but I wasn't super up close. So sometimes it's hard for me to see the details that the judges can see. And Jordan was, I think she was 10th or 11th last year's 10th. So like she's always in the mix, and she has a amazing structure. And
Yeah.
um so yeah, I just and here's the thing, when you're watching some of those groups, when they come out on stage, there's like 8 or 9 in the group, and you're like, oh wow, she looks great, but then she's standing next to Isa, who's standing next. It's like, holy crap. So sometimes I'm like, well, there's no way 4 people from this one group are going to be in first callouts, but that's how it went. Like a lot of the groups had nobody, and a lot of the groups had 2 or 3 people. um but yeah, I think, seeing Allie in that first call out, I was like, okay, like, when she's on, structurally, muscularly, she is as good as anyone up there. I was really thinking they were going to move her in. I thought initially they had her right next to Issa. And when Issa faced the back this year, it would reminded me of like 2 years ago, where from the front, you were like, oh man, Issa. And Issa's another one, like she can win this show.
Yeah.
But when she turned around, it was like there was no pop, which she had
Yeah.
at Tampa and she had at Texas.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, I 100% commend Issa has showed up like at Texas and Tampa best. Like, she's looked amazing at those 2 shows. But I feel like it's hard when you've showed up at your peak before. It's probably hard to match that look. And plus, the judges have seen you at your best. So anytime you're a little off, like they're going to recognize that right off the get-go. So, but I mean, she still placed arguably well in the top 10, but I'm sure she was probably fighting for a lot, of it.
Well, anybody that was last year in the top 10 and you take away the top two, if you didn't move up 2 spots, then you're probably a little frustrated. And I think she got 5th last year. So, technically she should have been fighting for top 3. And had she looked like she looked in Texas, she might have been in the middle. She could have got a shot in the middle. They gave Jazzy a shot for a second. Vanya got kind of moved up into that top 5, which, I probably would have moved up Vanya to 4th. I thought, but sometimes when you're not up close, you don't know exactly what the judges are picking apart. And Amy does fit the criteria so well. So even if she's not at her best, she's still better than most. But for me, we always talk about this on this podcast. When you're watching a show, the naked eye test, and it's really impossible to judge a show based on pictures. Because actually some of the competitors look much better in the pictures than they looked in person. I went online and looked at the pictures. I was like, oh man, she looks better than she did in person. In person, it was like really bad. So like when you're watching in person, I just kept looking at Maria Acosta and thinking, you gotta get her in there. Like, maybe I know she's new, but she was really on.
I remember seeing her when I think it was definitely at the Arnold this year. I remember I was at my hotel and I remember being in like the little hotel gym and doing cardio one morning, and I saw this girl out of the corner of my eye, and like she just caught my eye. She was working out and she just looked amazing. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's Maria Acosta. But I think it's really neat because she's like 5 foot nothing, maybe even a little bit shorter. And so the fact that she does so well. I think a lot of times people tend to think, oh, you have to be this like 5'3", 4" to do well in bikini. And like, that could not be farther from the truth. We saw girls 5 foot in the top 10. We saw, I mean, how tall is Laura Lee? Is she 5'6", 5'7"?
Yeah, she's definitely one of the taller girls
Same
on
with
the
Isa.
lineup. Yeah, but then you've got, the year that Daraja was top 4, you had Jen, Maureen, and Daraja, who were all, Jen's a little taller, but Maureen, Daraja are both around that 5'1", 5'2" mark.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Overall, it was just, I think the biggest shock, and I mean like shock and like this was an awesome thing, was seeing Jazzy get up there in 3rd place. I think a lot of people were like screaming, out of happiness for her. That was really neat to see her bump up to that third in the world placing.
Yeah, so anybody that knows Jazzy is not surprised. Anybody that's seen her compete is not surprised. Structurally, there is nobody better. Like, she's got that perfect shoulder to waist ratio. Muscular wise, she's got the dense glutes. Jazzy's career has just been so inconsistent. Like, for those that don't remember, Jazzy got 9th at the Olympia in 2020. She's been here before. Then she disappeared. And one thing that you got to remember about this sport is that it matters how you show up on the day of the show. Like, this is the Olympia. She walked out ready for the Olympia. This is how you get catapulted up. And that's, that's where it goes. Like, the year that Daraja got her first call out and got top 6, she was 13th the year before. So like, they are looking on the day of the show, live judging. They're not, yeah, you have your reputations and they know like who fits the criteria the best, but there's also times where they just go, wow, this person is on. And, I didn't see Jazzy at her shows this year. The last time I saw Jazzy was last November, standing next to Ariana when I had Ariana winning. And I kept looking at Jazzy going, golly, she is good. Like, she's really good. So yeah, like it doesn't surprise me that she got moved like that high. It's it's awesome to see because, she's not that typical top 6 girl that you just expect to always be there.
Right.
She is now. She's going to be, if she keeps being consistent, you think probably the Arnold, but you don't know. She could be like, no, she's already qualified for the Olympia by getting 3rd.
Yeah. No, I mean, she did really nail her look. And I mean, her posing is always fantastic too. She always brings a little bit of that like kind of like spunk and fire to stage. I love her personality on stage. So very, very happy for her. And she brought an incredible package. So congrats to her and Cash, because she brought it.
Yeah, Cash is someone who I've become very good friends with over the last couple of years. He was the NPC News Online announcer He's always backstage at shows doing interviews. He interviewed Daraja when she won the North Americans, and he's always been somebody that sends me text messages and saying, this is one of the first things I did was found him and just said congrats, he had a great day. And I think, Jazzy's one of those girls, like if she stays like this, she's going to be a contender every year. She's just too good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what she does next. Since she's already qualified for the Olympia, I don't know if she'll take a little bit of a break, if she'll continue to compete. It's always kind of interesting seeing what some of these girls' next steps are after the Olympia. I feel like some immediately go into like trying to qualify for next year. Obviously, Jazzy's already qualified, but some girls like to, be like Ashley Kay, rack up those wins, right? So it'll be
Well, I
interesting.
haven't looked. Maybe you can pull it up while we're talking, but the Hurricane Pro list should be out.
Got it. Yes, I've got it, Paul. So there's, I believe, 3 on this list.
Hold on. Let me guess. Wait, no, Yulia's already qualified, so I wouldn't expect her to be on.
You guessed. Well, yeah, no, she's not on this list. And I did talk to her this past weekend after she was on stage, and I asked her, I was like, are you taking a break for a little while? Because she's been competing a lot. I think she didn't really know yet, but she is not on this list. So there are 3
So hold
that
on.
just got off stage.
Romina.
No.
No. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. If it helps, none of them live in Florida. So
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking Romina, who just, she did not look great at Battle of the Body. So I thought maybe something happened with her peak, and with her being, I thought she'd be ready to go, but okay.
yeah, so it's actually, so the 3 on this list, unless I'm missing somebody who's a 4th who I don't recognize the name of, but there's Evie. So Evie will be at Hurricane Pro this upcoming weekend. And then Adair. Yes, Evie Eskandar, Adair, and then Brittany Gillespie is also going to be at this show. So
okay.
Yeah. And then I think, not that we need to do like a full like preview for the Hurricane Pro, but there's another person on this list. And mark my word, I think she has the potential to get up within like, I don't know, maybe as high up as top 2, but Gina Scafoglio. I don't know if you guys would probably recognize her if you saw her pictures, but she used to live in Florida. Yeah, she used to live in Florida, in Tampa, and she competed at the Southern Muscle Showdown a couple weeks ago. Like her return to stage after a year or 2, I think, and she, I want to say, got 5th, but she's just got a really amazing structure. So I could see her. I honestly feel like she could not easily, but she could definitely qualify for the Olympia this upcoming year. So she may give one of those former Olympians a run for their money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Adair looked great at the Olympia. I don't recall Evie, which is odd. I'd have to go back and look.
I don't either.
I don't remember what call out she was in, because she's been in the top. I want to say she's been in the top 15 for sure. I don't know if she's ever been in first call outs at the Olympia, but
yeah,
it's interesting.
And then Brittany Gillespie, which, I mean, she's done pretty good. I mean, she placed really well at Pittsburgh this past year. So that was amongst a pretty deep.
Yeah, she won the Charlotte show right before Pittsburgh, and then she did well at Pittsburgh. She's structurally, she's got that alien shoulder to waist glute ratio. She always has those striations in her glutes in that front pose. So it's like that. They're like cross striations across the, I don't know. I don't know what the judge's feedback is on that.
I almost wonder if that is, because I've always seen that too. And I almost wonder if that's more genetics than anything. Like, I don't know if it's an actual striation or not. Like if it's just like genetic, genetics, but yeah. Yeah. Well, any of the other, like any out of the top 10, any of the others you guys want to kind of touch on, or like any other surprises or things that you guys didn't expect?
I'll say I was a little surprised at how good Angelica Teixeira looked. Not that I'm surprised that she looked good, but she actually looked better than earlier this season. She took the time off, put on some size on her shoulders, so her upper body matched her lower better. I still don't love the way she hits her front pose. She kind of hides her shoulders, and I think she could look a little bit wider, but that maybe that's for a reason, obviously. But when she came out, I was like, okay, she's getting first call outs, just, based on how good she looks and how much improvements she's made. And she was complete.
Yeah, I definitely think seeing her at the Arnold and then now seeing her at this Olympia, she looked incredible. Like she definitely brought the improvements. Cause I remember when we were watching at the Arnold, Paul, I remember she kind of almost like in the glutes just looked a little soft or watery, or, that
Mhm.
was kind of the main thing at the Arnold, but she definitely brought a very complete, improved package. So I was happy that she, nudged her way into that top 10.
Yeah, I think, well, let's talk about like the surprises. Who were the biggest surprises? I think, Ali and Maria Acosta being in first call outs. Maria
Yes.
was not a surprise to me. Jazzy was not a surprise to me. Ali was, only because I believe she got like fifth a couple weeks before.
Yeah, and you know why else Allie was a little bit of a surprise to me. Like I'm so I think she looked incredible on stage and I'm really happy for her. But I remember I talked to her earlier in the week and she was having the same issue that like you and I were gonna potentially have, Paul, of not being able to fly out. Because she lives in St. Pete now. So I remember she said I think her and her husband had to drive to Fort Lauderdale and book a new flight just to get out. And like I just anytime you are dealing with like that enhanced stress, especially let alone on your peak week of the biggest show of the year, you just never know how that's going to impact somebody. So I was really, really happy to see that she pulled it together, got to Vegas, and not only that, but brought in a stellar, awesome package.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the Olympia, what's fun about it is kind of those stories. You kind of expect people to be where they're going to be. Um, one of the most impressive physiques I saw this year in person was when I was in Chattanooga at Junior Nationals. They had that pro show there. The girl that won that show, Raina, um, and then we saw her at the Republic of Texas, Lexi. She
Yes.
wasn't as good at Republic, but she's just got that just wow factor as far as the glute size and so it was good to see her get recognized at the top show. Um, we haven't talked about Vanya, like not for nothing, but
Mhm.
Vanya had a sick year. She was knocking at the door at the first Arnold. She won the Arnold UK, top 5 at the Olympia. And
Yeah, she's had a pretty incredible year, and I definitely had her up there in like that top 5 to 6 kind of mix. So she landed in fifth. And I mean, I think looking at her pictures next to like the other girls in front of her, I mean, I'm not a judge, but I would say maybe just some more like depth to the glutes would make her stand out a little bit more. But I mean,
uh,
yeah, she looked incredible. And she's another one just with immaculate stage presence. Like she does a lot of twisting and turning and twirling in her posing routine, but like she pulls it off and it's just very captivating.
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, maybe it's worth mentioning because I believe a couple years ago, Daraja was the first woman of color, to get into that first call out at the Olympia. And this year you had 2 in the top 5.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, that was neat to see. Yeah. And then, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Vanya, yeah, I feel like she's not one that's talked about as much, but she's definitely had an incredible year. So, again, it'll be interesting to see what some of these girls do post Olympia. Like, are they going to shut it down? Are they going to take a break? Or are they going to ride this high and ride this momentum and, keep competing for either a qualification or just more wins under their belt?
Yeah, it is a little bit different now that the show is in October. We've got a little more time till the Arnold.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to see how people, apply and go after that because there's still quite a bit of season left. There's shows all the way
Yeah.
up until December. Um, so there's some good opportunities right now. To only have 3 Olympians the week after the Olympia, um, and then you've got the Atlantic Coast, got the Ben Weider coming up. There's a show in California, and then there's a show in Hawaii. So there's a bunch of, I think last year there was maybe time for one show. Like 2 weeks later was the Atlantic Coast, and that was it.
About it.
That was,
Yep.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, because the Olympia was in November. And then the year before that, I remember it was like in December, like the week before Christmas. That was weird.
yeah. That was very strange. So, um, we can talk a little bit about the venue. It was a little bit different this year. 2 years ago when it was in Vegas, it was at Planet Hollywood, and then the hotel was the Paris, and then the expo. It was very like centered around the strip, like the main part of Vegas, like where the Bellagio and all the Cosmo and all that is. This year it was at I'd never heard of Resorts World. I guess it's new.
So no.
It felt like we were completely separated from the strip. Like there was no association because everything was there. Even the amateur Olympia and the Meet the Olympians were in that tent outside, which don't get twisted. It wasn't a tent, but it was a tent structure.
It was neat. Like they had that red carpet leading into it. Honestly, I thought personally, I know some may disagree and say it was too hot, but I thought the weather in Vegas was perfect for this event. Like it wasn't overly hot, but it wasn't cold. Like 2 years ago when the Olympia was in Vegas, it was actually really cold. I remember it was like in the 30s and 40s, which just doesn't make it fun having to go outside. But yeah, I loved the venue. It was just a little, I felt like it was very kind of spaced apart. I know even some people that tried to drive to the convention center for the expo. I know one person, she lives locally and she tried to drive and there was no parking. So she just ended up like driving home and Ubering there. So I know that that was kind of
Wow.
hard, but I liked the venue this year.
Yeah, we found a parking garage. They did have from the venue, if you didn't know about it, one of my clients, Jamaica, she told me about it. They had the Tesla loop, which goes underneath the city from the convention centers to some of the hotels. And one of the hotels was the what was the name of the host hotel?
Resort
Resorts World.
World. Yeah.
So the Resorts World had tons of parking. I never had a problem finding a parking spot there. So you could have done that and then taken the loop in, which was fun. It was like $3 one way and free the other. I forget which was which. I think
Well,
it was
that's
I think
neat.
it was free to go to the convention center and you had to pay like $3 or $4 to go back.
Okay. I did see a couple people post about the like underground Tesla thing, but that makes sense because I feel like half of the Ubers I got were all Teslas. I mean, they didn't use the underground situation, but there were a lot
No,
of
I think that was a specific loop of drivers. They were just down there just doing that
Oh,
all day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I got around very easily. I've always found Vegas to be very convenient. The convention center parking lot where it used to be is now convention center space, so there was less parking. I did notice that, but I actually I parked in that parking garage right next door to the hotel nearby, so I didn't have a problem. Um, yeah, it just feels different. I don't know. It's every Olympia has a unique feel to it, and I remember going back to the Olympia back when it was at the Orleans for that, and then the convention was at this felt again its own uniqueness. That Resorts World was very nice, don't get me wrong, but it just, I don't know, it was more, I thought it was more fun being down in the Vegas Strip 2 years ago.
yeah. No, I liked it. I kind of hope they keep it in Vegas. I know it's not always the easiest travel for us living in Florida, but it is fun because we always talk about how sometimes traveling to these shows, like it's just fun to be able to get to explore a different city. And Vegas is honestly one of those I've never really explored a lot. So it was kind of fun to explore, along with attend the event.
The amount of gyms in that city is shocking. There are so many gyms.
And good
So
jumps.
Yeah, yeah, good gyms for sure. Yeah, I lucked out on because when I got there, so I was originally supposed to fly to Vegas on Thursday. Clearly that didn't happen because the airport was closed. So I flew out Tuesday morning and thankfully I have a cousin who lives in Vegas. I hadn't seen him in a couple years, but I stayed with him and he lived about a mile from Torture Gym. So that's where I went on Wednesday, I think. And I mean, it was a great gym. It was really busy, but they usually are on Olympia weekend or week. But it was, yeah, there are a lot of nice gyms there with some really fun equipment.
yeah, and even the local gyms like EOS and the LVACs and those gyms are great too. So yeah,
Yeah.
no
Do we want
shortage.
to do we want to talk a little bit about like why to kind of end this episode, do we want to talk a little bit about why the Olympia is so important and kind of what it does for the rest of the season, like how it re-emphasizes the standard? Do we want to talk about like some of the just physique trends we noticed and things like that?
Yeah, I think during the season we can get caught up on a single competitor winning a show or how a certain look is being rewarded. But I feel like the way that they frame the Olympias, they always bring it back down to the standard. And there's some girls that did well during the season. I mean, I remember watching and thinking like, oh man, this girl's in fifth call outs. She won like 3 or 4 shows this year, right? So like there's always also, you got to imagine from a competitor's perspective, there's also some huge letdowns. And one thing that has always stood out to me about the Olympia is you've got everybody working so hard to get qualified for the Olympia. And there was like 52 this year that I think competed. And then you go to the prejudging at noon on Saturday. And when that's over, there are now 3 girls that are qualified for the next Olympia. They're all not qualified. It's like, I just remember having this feeling of like, wow, it's like, it was almost like, that post-show blues or like, man, you worked so hard for this moment and then boom, it's over. So you really got to make sure you're taking care of yourself going into this show. Yeah, I mean, and I think the standard was pretty well kept between the Arnold and last year's Olympia. You know, you saw pretty much the same athletes up there.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It is a very weird feeling to think, I mean, somebody winning a show, being on cloud nine that they go to the Olympia, and then it's like being in that pool of like the sea of 16, as we say, and then not being qualified for the next year and having to start from the ground up, right? I think that is always just a very odd feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's always an honor to get there, but I think you got to make sure you're taking care of yourself and doing the right things for yourself long term, and not
Absolutely.
place too much emphasis on just being an Olympian, because it's all over. Now it's done. Now we got a whole year till the next Olympia. I'm sure there's a few girls qualified because there was a couple shows prior to the cutoff that were
Yeah.
won. I think Yulia actually won one of those, so she's already qualified.
Yeah, Yulia, Jordan Brannon, Deanna Dang, Ashley Hampton, they all qualified at like shows in the past
Yeah,
couple of weeks. So I
yeah,
think
that's
they're
awesome.
looking at
And
a
then
list. There's like 11, I think, qualified so far for next year. So
is
yeah,
Jazzy already on there? Did they put Jazzy
yeah,
on there yet?
yeah, Jazzy is on there. Yes. Yeah. So and something else I think is like worthwhile and worth mentioning is like when looking at the top 10, I think something that is important to emphasize is the fact, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a lot of newer bikini competitors are always chasing the glute ham tie-in. Like that's what usually we microfixate on our physique with, is like, let me get that glute ham tie-in. However, although that is important, and everybody in the top 10 has that, I would argue and say what's even more important is like that depth to the glutes, like the fullness and
Yeah.
that 3D pop. Like you can have a glute hamstring tie-in, but if there's no depth to your glutes or no pop, then like you probably aren't going to place as well as maybe you think. So don't just chase the glute ham tie-in, although that is important. It's not an end all be all. And I think that, that depth and density in the glutes is, takes priority.
It's pretty, when the athlete turns around and you see that, those lines, you go, okay, this person's in shape. But yeah, I mean, you can't sacrifice the muscle to get that look, because then you're going to lose the depth at the top. And if you look at the, Laura Lee, her glutes are very full from
Mhm.
top to bottom, same as Ashley, very full from top to bottom. And so that's really what separates them, because yeah, they don't want to have everybody in the division dieting down until they can see their tie-ins. They want everyone in the division to have the muscle and the shape to have that almost, be there due to the muscle, not due to being so shredded.
Yes, absolutely. Because I feel like a lot of times you'll meet these competitors too. Not all of them, but you'll meet them like before they step on stage at the Olympia, like at the expo or at the Meet the Olympians. And, although they are like stage lean, it's not like a overwhelming, like, oh my God, you're so tiny, or you look emaciated, or you're like sickly small. Like they all arguably look somewhat healthier, right? Because they just have a more muscle on their frame. So they don't have to get to that level of like being so small to the point where it's like, ooh, you have to do a double take thinking like, are they okay? Right. So they all generally look pretty healthy when you see them off stage just because of the amount of muscle that they carry.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised Allie's not in the Hurricane. She lives in Pinellas
Mhm.
Park, which is pretty close to there. So
Oh. I know I'm kind of yeah, but I mean, I guess if I
she'll probably do
personally,
Atlanta
I don't,
shows. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if this is her reasoning, but I know if I were her having the week she did last week, just trying to get
Sure.
out, I'm sure she's like, I just want to breathe. And so who
Well,
knows?
and
Maybe
to be fair, a lot of people still don't have power in our area. A couple of my
Yep.
friends, a couple of businesses are still closed. The school was closed today near us. So the kids are not in school here. So yeah, there's still a lot going on. A couple of my athletes that are doing the show are like, hey, is it still happening? And I was like, to my knowledge, everything is as scheduled.
Yeah, I did talk to Tim this past weekend and he said it was good to go. So, yeah. Something else though that I think, so I want to point this out real quickly because this is just a caveat to last week's episode that came out. So Coach Sarah and I did an episode over like breast augmentations, but this is just another like example of how you don't have to have a breast augmentation to do well in bikini. Because Laura Lee, She's our champ. She doesn't have one. I don't think Jazzy has one. And I mean, they both placed obviously very high up. So it's just another example. You do not need them to do well in competing. I mean, if you want them, that's one thing, but don't feel like you have to get them to do well.
Not agree more. Yeah. In fact, it can be a detriment. Some athletes get them and it throws off their balance, whatever it may be. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think another thing to point out too is this may be helpful for like newer competitors who are listening. But if you look at like the top 10 or just look at everybody that was in this show bikini wise, you'll notice every competitor holds like their poses a little bit different, right? We're not talking like big differences, but even just, you know, in the back pose, some have a slightly wider stance than others. In the front pose, some have their hand on their hip a little bit higher up or a little bit lower down. And so like all of these things are generally done for a specific reason to bring out the best shape in that person's physique. So that's why I always tell, you know, people it's not posing like that. There's a reason that there's not just a generalized video out there that you can go click on and learn from to learn your perfect posing, because it is going to be a little bit different person to person depending on your frame.
Yeah, I think the hard part with posing is you look at your favorite competitor and you want to pose like your favorite competitor, but a lot of it comes down to length of your torso, length of your limbs, obviously the structure, the width of your shoulders, things like that, the width of your hips. And so I mean, the best posers, you know, and I'll probably always go back to Daraja because she was the first competitor that I ever had that took the posing to the level that she did. You know, now you've got, you know, Lana doing similar things, but like Daraja practiced so much that I think she would notice things on her that she might like a little bit better. So she was actually getting better at beating herself. So like she would notice, you know, the little details that were better when she hit a pose a certain way. So, you know, as a posing coach, you know, you got a lot of experience. So that can shorten that time for you. If you work with a posing coach that's good, they're going to be like, hey, let's try some different things. You know, when I'm posing a client, I'm like, hey, let's try putting the hand lower. No, I don't like that. Okay, now let's put, you know, I always say the belly button should be about 45 degrees off stage. Let's try putting it a little closer to 90. No, I don't like that. Let's go back. So the best thing to do for yourself is take videos, take pictures, and compare yourself to yourself and find that best look for you. You can always start with the top girls and go, okay, you know, foot position, hand position, you're going to probably find some commonalities, but those little differences are going to go a long way, especially the higher you go up in the sport. You can be a terrible poser and win with a great physique. The higher up you go in the sport, you cannot do that.
Amen. Yes. Yeah, very, very good points there. And I also thought, like, just being a girl, I thought it was interesting to see like the different suit colors that were worn. Cause I know when earlier this year at the Pittsburgh Pro, it seemed like almost like all of the top 5-10 was wearing red. So I feel like there was like a very even mix of a lot of like your jewel tone colors on stage, like blues, reds, greens, some purples. I feel like there was like a very even mix of colors this year.
Yeah, you would notice that you're more into the suit, you know, world with angels.
Yeah.
But you know, the suits that I tend to notice now are the ones that I go, oh, that's an interesting choice.
Yes.
But
And I notice a lot, and I'm sure you guys notice this too, like back coverage, like bottom coverages. Because some girls, I mean, it doesn't happen, I don't feel like as much at the Olympia level, but sometimes you'll look at a girl's suit bottom, like the back of it, and be like, ooh, that's way too much
I
coverage. Or,
didn't, you know, that's one thing I did not notice that this year. I did not ever see somebody face the back and go, what are they doing? Because there's been a couple of years where I'm like, that is a straight T back. There is no material.
yeah. And I think that honestly, I mean, most of the Olympians, I think, wear suits from some of the bigger like suit companies in the industry. And I know that a lot of the suit companies have worked pretty diligently to like evolve and make sure that their kind of fit works for most people. Cause yeah, there's been some times I've seen some girls with some really bad bottoms, either too much coverage or also the opposite, too little coverage. I think they even like, I can't remember who it was. I don't know if it was a judge or may have been one of the Manions earlier this year, even said something like, put it out there like, hey, like you need to fit in your suit. Like you can't be like there needs to be more coverage down there.
Yeah, Tampa, JM came backstage and he was shooting the show and he said there was a few girls that when they hit their front pose, the front bunched up and you could see in, and he was like, listen, you guys can't have that, you know, so they needed a, I don't know, the wellness bottoms have kind of gotten popular with the deep V at the front. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do
Yeah, but
that.
overall it was a fun show. Really happy with, who they awarded, and yeah, I'm excited to see what a lot of these girls do next.
Yeah, it's been an interesting evolution. I think we all thought Laura Lee was going to win a title before this year. Now the question will be, how many does she win? Is she going to be back next year? Um, you know, early speculation. I'm sure Maureen and Jen are coming back. I don't know why Jen decided to set out this year. She didn't compete the whole year. Maybe she just wanted, life to happen. I think she moved, some things like that. Business, who knows? But she's young. I don't even think she's 30 yet, right? So you've got a
I think she actually, I saw like the week of the Olympia. I think her birthday was like a week ago. I think she's 28, I
right.
think.
So you've got Laura Lee, who's young. Issa is still very young. Ashley's still kicking it. Maureen, she might be a little bit on the older side, but she's going to have a whole year of rest. I'm guessing she's going to come, the big question marks for me, because I've been coaching at the Olympia now. This was my 5th year with athletes at the Olympia. The girls that, have been competing the most in the season seem to struggle the most at the Olympia, right? So, if you look at the last 2, maybe 3 years of Amy Delgado, she won the Tampa Pro. She's won Pittsburgh twice, New York twice. I mean, I'm probably missing a few. I know she won the Wasatch. She won Legion last year. I mean, she probably has the most pro wins, major pro wins. I think probably Ashley does more shows, but Amy's got more of those like wow factor titles, but she keeps, first year at the Olympia, I think she got 9th, then 6th, then 6th, now 4th. But that 4th includes the top 2 not being there. Right. So, I think she was expecting, and, even in some of the conversations I had, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a repeat of the Arnold with Amy and Laura Lee. So it'll just be curious to see what she does now. Does she skip the Arnold, or does she go, you know what, screw that, I want my Arnold title?
Yeah, I know. I kind of wonder that too. I know I followed Amy for a long time now, and I mean she has a daughter, so part of me wonders, maybe she will want to take a little bit of time off just to, you know, spend more like free time with her family. But it was kind of interesting because I kind of had assumed, since Amy hadn't stepped on stage in a little while, and she was, she would be kind of refined and refreshed and bring a package out on stage that could give Laura Lee a run for her money. But I mean, she still looked great, but I don't feel like it was the best Amy we've seen yet.
Well, and that's it. These judges know these athletes so well, and they saw Amy at the Arnold. They saw Amy at Pittsburgh, New York, Wasatch. So, and I'm sure she felt it. Like, when your physique is on, when you're like nailing it. And I'm telling you, at Wasatch, I was like, what's the reason we could beat her? There wasn't any. I was like, she's just too good. If that look was at the Olympia, I think it would have been very interesting. So I'll be curious to see what someone like she does when you're that close. And this sport rewards what you bring on the day of the show. So she can on any day win the Olympia, right?
Yeah.
Depending on who's there and who shows up. So I think this was the year of the most. There was a lot of people you were expecting to be in the top that weren't, and a lot of new faces got to kind of show who they are. So that was always exciting.
Yeah, and we haven't talked much about it, but it was kind of a cool year too, because we have a new wellness Olympia champ as well. So I think a lot of people were kind of excited to see that too. So overall, it was just, I think, a really exciting Olympia.
I mean, we have a new Mr. Olympia. We have a retired classic physique 6-time champion, figure 8-time champion, a new wellness, like a lot of turnover this year. And next year is going to be a lot of interesting things going on, because that's what, 3 years in a row the Mr. Olympia title has changed hands.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Like that didn't happen. All the years I was watching Olympia growing up, it was like Lee Haney won it for 8 years, and then Dorian won it for 6 years. And it was like whoever got a hold of the title held it forever. Right now, it's like every year, who's gonna be on the day of the show.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it fun. Because I mean, it is nice. It is kind of cool, like when you have somebody who always shows up on and always wins. But I think it's even more fun when, you don't quite know, and it can be in anybody's hands at any given moment. So I'm excited. And did they announce yet if it's in Vegas next year for sure, or?
Yeah, they've got a couple-year contract in Vegas, and I suspect they're going to keep it there. I mean, listen, I would love it to be in Orlando. Like that was a very convenient. Being in Vegas for a whole
Nice.
week is very, very hard on me. Um, it actually, with the storm happening, it actually helped because my kids were not in school. I didn't miss any soccer practices. I didn't miss anything. Nothing happened while I was gone.
Right. Wait, because aren't you a soccer coach? Don't you coach your son's soccer team? Oh, I
No,
thought you did
no.
for some reason.
But he plays for a club team, which requires both of my boys are on the club team now. They're 10 and 6, but it's a lot of driving. It's like 30 minutes away to this club. So I'm driving out there at least once or twice a week to that. And then the games are on the weekend. So not being home, I was like, man, I'm going to miss, school drop-offs and pickups and soccer and all these things. So I didn't miss anything, you know, I was
Nice.
stressed, with the family being safe, but it wasn't like this, too much guilt, but it would have been nice to be home. So I'm pretty sure they've announced that it's going to be there for a couple of years.
Okay, cool. Cool. All right.
The,
Well,
the big announcement was actually the Pittsburgh Pro. This year they've announced the Pittsburgh Pro is going to have a full-on expo and
yeah.
a $200,000 open bodybuilding prize.
That's gonna be cool. I'm already gonna say it. I'm gonna go. I thought that was so fun
We'll
last
go
year.
for sure.
So
Evan,
yeah.
I kind of wonder, like with Nick not being at the Olympia this year, I mean, that Pittsburgh Pro title has got to be one of those, that's one of those shows that they're going to be very grateful whoever comes and does that because they take
I'm pretty sure a lot of those are on his radar right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Nick not being there this year was another one of those like, man, what would have happened? Could he have been in that top 3, top 4? Very easily would have shaken up the show. Do you think they got the Mr. Olympia right?
I think they did. Yeah, for sure.
I didn't talk to many people or anybody that thought anything but Samson.
Yeah. From everyone I heard that was there, it was pretty convincing with that. I know Hottie was flat the first day, even though they did tie on the scorecards. I think Derek's kind of imbalances started showing a little bit more on stage this year too, with his upper body growing, his legs kind of staying the same. Which I think kind of threw that off.
I didn't watch it in person, so I didn't get that. But that's interesting. His legs not being the same. That's crazy.
Well, his upper body grew, right?
Yeah.
So again, I wasn't there in person, right? So all I see is videos. So I'm taking the opinions of people that were there, that saw it. I think that is, especially at that level, when everyone is that close, and the scorecards kind of show that too. I mean, Derek was a unanimous third.
Yep.
On both nights. Yeah. So yeah.
But they kept putting him in the middle, so I think it was throwing people. And then Martin was probably the biggest surprise, right? Like,
not to me, but to a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
I liked him 2 years ago when I saw him get second to Andrew Jacked. Like he's just fantastic. So for him,
he's not missing anything. Everything's proportionate.
Yeah,
it's just very
he's
good.
He's one of those guys that can still grow and not kind of mess up his frame. And
if he takes his time, he'll be very dangerous. If he takes his time with it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, honestly, if you have someone like Samson taking the title and he keeps getting better, I mean,
it's gonna be hard. Yeah,
he's gonna be tough to beat in the years ahead. He said he was like 300 pounds. That is just remarkable.
Yeah, he doesn't weigh himself. Well, his wife weighs him, but she knows his weight, but he doesn't know his weight. It's kind of fun. Yeah, it messes with his head, so he doesn't like to see it.
Interesting. Oh, and also shout out to, I feel so bad. I'm awful with names, but I have to say there were a few people that came up to me this weekend and said they listened to our podcast. Actually, one of the first people that I met she works at the front desk at Torture. So if she's listening, shout out to her. But she immediately was like, oh, I listened to your guys' podcast. So we always love that.
Oh, I'm going to give a shout out to the Olympia Trading Card Company. So
yes,
the Olympia Trading Cards, they've been doing this for a couple of years, and I've been hunting for Daraja's cards. So they only had people that were top 5 at the Olympia. So I found their booth this year. Check this out. And so I found their booth and I ended up purchasing, they had a Daraja card graded. And if you guys don't know, I collect baseball cards. In fact, there's a whole bunch of them up there that are like my rookies that are graded, whatever. But so I found this. And then the next day, the lady sent me a DM. She's like, hey, I went back home last night, went through my personal collection, and she handed me like a stack of Daraja cards. So now I can send some to Daraja.
Nice.
I've got Daraja baseball cards.
I love it.
So shout out to them.
Awesome.
What'd you think of the expo? We'll finish on this.
Oh, I had a blast at the expo. Shout out to Prime Bites because they were like, I think that's where like Lana and I and everybody else at my booth were getting the majority of our macros for like the first half of the day because they were like sampling their little not like brownies, but they're like brownie blondie deals. They were so good. But I thought the expo was super fun. Yeah, and I didn't feel like it was overwhelmingly crowded to the point where, like, I remember the Arnold this past year. I literally remember there was one point in the expo where I was like stuck, like, so many people next to me. I couldn't move. I never felt that this year at the Olympia. Maybe it was because the booth I was working was like a little removed from the stage, but I thought the expo was great.
Yeah, it was a good size. It never felt insane. Good flow. I always felt like I could get everywhere. Obviously, when the show was happening, the crowd was up there by the stage. And I love that they still do that. You know, they keep the show in the expo. The energy there is crazy. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's just a fun time, like going and seeing people you haven't seen in a while or meeting people that maybe you followed for a while and you've never met in person. I think that's half the fun of these weekends and like why I just love going because I don't know, just it's fun to be around your people.
Love it. All right. Well, I guess that'll be it. We'll just stick because it's already been an hour. We'll just stick to that for the code this week, the bikini Olympia review. And I think the winner was no surprise, but I think the fun part was all the other surprises that there were. I wonder if anybody took the time to take every competitor and place them, because I'd be interested to see where some of the people that potentially could have been higher were. You know, because when you're watching it, it's so easy to mix when they're doing call outs and you're like fourth call out, I would see somebody and be like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that person. And then fifth call out, oh my gosh, that person's in fifth call. So like, I'd just be curious to see where some of the names went. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the year. I have a funny feeling next year it's going to be the return with Jen and Maureen, and then Laura Lee will have the title. And then Ashley will still want another, you know what I'm saying? Like I think it's next year is going to be perhaps one of the most competitive Olympias of all time.
I think so. That'll be exciting.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see. Maybe everybody retires. Who knows?
Oh gosh, no, keep going, keep going. But all right, well, thank you guys for listening. I would say see you at Hurricane this weekend, but this will come out on Monday, so there will be no point in that. But we'll be at Hurricane this weekend. So
We'll say it's good to see you guys at the Hurricane. Nice. Thank you for coming.
yeah, if you saw me, good to see you at the Hurricane. Yes.
Perfect. All right,
Bye.
guys.